and talking about refugees and mass migration. We're being joined from London by immigration lawyer, Mr. Dayo Fadino. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the program.
Oh, good morning. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
When people are displaced in the way that people have been displaced in the Ukraine by conflict, what are their options when they have to leave?
Once again, good morning. The Russian-Ukraine conflict at this point is causing so much problems for neighboring European countries. As we speak, well over about 10 million people have been displaced and dislodged. We have a situation where we have, at this point in time, about 3 million refugees all over Europe, particularly the neighboring countries. Poland, you have Romania, you have Hungary, Belarus, Slovakia, and so many other countries actually now taking in these refugees. And what we need to be looking at this point is, many of these refugees looking up to international organizations and agencies to be able to actually take care of them. We have a situation where it seems this refugee crisis would continue, and we do not even know when or how this conflict would come to an end. And for these reasons, there should be so many international agencies, and we have so many of them, who should now be coming to the aid of so many of these refugees all over Europe. It's a very, very tough, hard situation for so many of them. We have children, we have children who have been bombed, women who have been killed, the whole country, Ukraine, been decimated and destroyed by the Russian forces. So indeed, many of these international organizations, we have, the Refugee Council, we have the UNICEF, and so many others should be coming to the aid of all these refugees who are now being displaced through no fault of theirs. There's also a situation which is quite ironic, where you have the Russian army, and Air Force bombing the Ukrainians, and these same Ukrainians are also quite discriminatory against African students who are in Ukraine, not allowing them to actually enter the same buses or the same trains. The whole thing is now becoming so not very helpful for the whole world at all, for all this to be happening at this point in time.
There are different categories of people who are migrating, of course, and as you've pointed out, and as we've reported, about 10 million people already in just about a month of the invasion have been displaced. Now, 10 million people on the move. Amongst them are citizens of Ukraine, foreign residents of Ukraine, and then students like the Nigerians you alluded to there, and then other professionals who may have been just caught up, trapped by the conflict. When they move to other countries, from what we have seen, some of the neighboring countries, particularly Poland, Hungary, and Romania, have issued special considerations to allow them come in, but those considerations have a timeline. Now, beyond that timeline, what happens to them if they don't leave becomes an actual issue. And that's why I said, what options do they have under international law, under immigration law, to help themselves if nobody is actually coming to their aid? And then, of course, there's the issue of the International Office of Migration, which probably should be front and center of all of this, shouldn't it?
Indeed. You're quite correct in that respect. What many of these refugees should be doing, whether you are actually Ukrainian or whether you are citizens of other countries, what they should be doing is indeed looking up to the international community, particularly the UN, because under the UN Convention for Refugees, there is very, very clear that where we have a very war-torn zone, where people are fleeing violence and killing. The UN Convention states very clearly that all neighboring countries that where these refugees are running to, they should be actually taken care of by international agencies, looking for at least providing the necessary housing, the necessary feeding, medical care for so many of these refugees. So it's an international obligation on the part of the UN and so many other international organizations to be able to actually take care of all these refugees. And that's what should be happening right now. There are some people who are actually going to other countries. Take, for instance, the moment you are able to actually cross over to a place like Poland or Hungary, if you have family members in France, in Germany, or in the UK, there are things put in place right now where you could now apply or even being given that right straight away to move to France or to move to Germany. The UK is a little bit sluggish on this in the sense that they still believe that they should be applying for visas. They've also put a very particular scheme in place right now where they are appealing to UK citizens, if they could actually accommodate any of these refugees, they are prepared to at least give that incentive of about £350 per refugee. So these are the measures being put in place right now by most of the European countries surrounding Ukraine, and the countries that are not too far, that are a bit far away from Ukraine. All these measures have been put in place for them to actually be taken care of. It's an international obligation, and it's a human right of every single person who has been displaced to be taken care of, medically, educationally, housing, and so many other, basic human rights that many of these refugees should be entitled to.
Let's bring it home, shall we? In the case of Nigerians who are caught up in Ukraine as professionals or as students and so on, theirs may be slightly different. Correct me if I'm wrong, because they, particularly for those of them who are trying to return to Nigeria and not stay back in any of the neighboring countries or in any of the countries in Europe or the United States or even the UK, if they want to come home and the home authorities are not able to help them, how can they meander through this legally without getting caught up in the immigration rules of any of the countries that they have to pass through?
Again, I stress what I actually stated earlier. As human, every single human being, right, is entitled to the protection of the international community. If indeed the countries where many of these nationals come from, the Nigerians, the South Africans, the Asians and other, if their countries are not truly and really doing anything, to help their nationals, their citizens, these citizens should look up to the international community, because honestly, they've been dislodged and displaced through no fault of theirs. They are human beings with human rights, after all. Indeed, if the governments of many of these citizens are not doing anything, they should at least approach many of these agencies who are still trying to actually help as many refugees as possible. These students, these professionals became refugees through no fault of theirs. So the international community should still be able to at least take care of these citizens, provide them with the basic necessities of life until indeed they'll be able to at least go back home, or until indeed the respective governments do one or two things actually to get them out of either Poland or Hungary, if they've crossed over to Hungary, or even within Ukraine. There's still so many of them there been stranded. So the international community should be able to actually take care of anybody who is a refugee under the UN Convention pertaining to refugees.
One of the things that may appear to be possible with this kind of situation that we have now, is the potential, shall we say, for human trafficking, what is described as human trafficking, or traffickers to take advantage of both those who are fleeing and to use the opportunity or the cover of the fact that so many people are on the move, and many of them may not be either in the right state of mind or have the complete documents or know who to go to, and therefore they'll be vulnerable. Given this kind of circumstances, again, I know you've talked about the fact that everybody is an international citizen under this situation, but you've also said that quite a number of people have not been sticking to that. So if we have this kind of situation again, and the potential for what has just been described, already we're of course hearing reports about people being sent back and people being sent across and people being detained and so on. So again, it creates a fluid situation, and I'm wondering, what do you make of this?
Well, when it comes to a war-torn situation, when it comes to a place where we have a very serious issue of, millions of refugees moving from one part of, from Ukraine to so many other countries, particularly in their millions. As I stated earlier, 10 million people have already been dislodged just in a month. We do not know how long this war is going to continue. But if it should continue at this frequency, we have a situation where there could be possibly even about 6, 7, 10 million refugees living in neighboring countries who have left Ukraine. In such circumstances, we may not be able to help people who would want to now take advantage of all these refugees and start, trafficking human beings. People would always want to take advantage of that kind of situation. All the states involved could do is to at least do their best to prevent that kind of situation happening at all. But unfortunately and sadly, there would definitely be human traffickers who would want to now take advantage of the refugee situation, arising in Ukraine as we speak. It's a very, very sad situation, but unfortunately, there will always be people who want to now milk the system and do what they could to take advantage of the serious Russian Ukraine refugee situation happening at this point in time.
Well, before I let you go, you made mention of it, so I would ask you to just give a bit of detail, because again, we have been hearing the reports. What you mentioned earlier about the Home Open scheme in the UK where you are, which is supposed to help some categories of refugees from the Ukraine. If I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, does that apply only to Ukrainians, or is it open to anybody who is fleeing from Ukraine? How does it work?
It's unfortunately, going by what the rules are stating, the UK government is very, very clear on the position that as far as the home scheme for Ukrainians is concerned, it would only pertain to Ukrainians. They've not mentioned any other nationality fleeing persecution. And indeed, when you now want to apply for this very particular visa, they normally apply for this visa online. Particularly the sponsor who now wants to actually bring this person into the UK. And the specific question they'll be asking you is, are you Ukrainian? Not, are you an international person fleeing from crisis in Ukraine? That very particular scheme is related to Ukrainians alone and nobody else.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Fadinov, for the clarification there. I'm sure quite a lot of people listening have learned quite a lot from this conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you on Russian Invasion this morning. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll have more stories on day 26 of the Russian invasion. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.